We're back with a Fox News alert. The Pentagon confirms a U.S. drone strike killed the ISIS-K planner believed to be behind the attack in Kabul. This as Joe Biden's national security team warns another attack is likely near the Kabul airport. Our next guests say we need to ramp up our response to the ISIS-K threats. Joining us now, retired Army captain, former Army Ranger, and Republican Ohio Congressman Warren Davidson, Afghanistan war veteran and Republican Indiana Congressman Jim Banks, and retired Army infantry captain and Pennsylvania Republican Senate candidate Sean Parnell. Gentlemen, all, thanks so much for being here. Congressman Davidson, let me start with you. Your initial reaction to this strike and if it meets with the threat level we're facing right now.
Look, it absolutely meets with that in terms of targeting who are the people responsible. ISIS-K and other terror groups need to know that there will be no sanctuary, whether it's in Afghanistan or anywhere else. So I think it does send a strong message, but, is it enough? Of course not.
Representative Banks, we saw a similar threat, warning put out by the State Department before the suicide bombing that tragically took the lives of 13 Americans. We've got another one, presumably ISIS-K. Do you believe that the Taliban will sufficiently provide that outer cordon? And what other things are you thinking about right now?
Well, absolutely not. We would be naive to believe that this one drone strike on an ISIS planner, which, by the way, was successful, and I'm glad he was killed, is going to stop more attacks like what we saw this week. And this is what we have to be prepared for. I mean, the situation on the ground is dangerous. It's growing in danger. The State Department put out another warning to Americans not to go to the airport, which means that we still have thousands of Americans trapped behind enemy lines who want to get out of the country, who can't get out of the country because of the incompetence of this president and his team around him who are unable to get them out. That needs to be the sole focus and mission at this moment, getting every American out safely without any more bloodshed. And I don't have any degree of confidence that this president or his team can do that at the moment.
Well, why would you, in light of how things have been handled? And it's an important reminder, U.S. citizens, U.S. allies locked out of the only way out right now, and surrounded by the Taliban and threats of ISIS-K. I was reminded last night, Sean, that when President Trump dropped the Moab in Afghanistan in 2017, it was on an ISIS-K hideout, killing reportedly about 90 ISIS-K. We also know the Taliban released thousands of ISIS-K just weeks ago when we gave up Bagram. So it's a threat that has been addressed, almost eradicated under Trump, and now here it's back.
Yeah, well, there's no question about it. And look, Pete, this planner, I'm glad, like I said, I'm glad this terrorist is dead, but this planner should already be dead. We should have approached this withdrawal from a position of strength. Instead, we've negotiated with Taliban, who are undoubtedly coordinating with other terrorist groups on the ground. 13 Marines are dead. Hundreds of Afghan men, women, and children are dead. In 7 months under President Trump, al-Qaeda and ISIS was decimated. In 8 months under Joe Biden, the Taliban, al-Qaeda, Hekmatyar control an entire country. And not only that, they're woven into the very fabric of the interim government of Afghanistan and now hold enormous power. And because of Joe Biden, by the way, which there have been no consequences for any of this, but because of Joe Biden and his inept administration, the Taliban and all of these terrorist groups are on stronger footing now than they were prior to 9/11, and there have been yet to be any consequences at all.
And the Haqqani Network, a designated terrorist organization, which the Taliban should be as well, is in charge of checkpoints. They're the #2 in Kabul, is running the show, and we're relying upon them right now. I got to get you all three in on another topic as well. And Representative Banks, specifically, I want to get you on a portion of it because I know you were involved in a lot of how this equipment was allocated. But Representative Davidson, let me start with you. The Taliban has $85 billion in U.S. military equipment. What can and should be done about that?
Well, obviously, it should have never come into their hands. As my colleagues have highlighted, epic failure by the Biden administration. But that's not going to change anything going forward. Right now, we need to be focused 100% on a mission, which is get every single American who wants out. We should not be focused on a date. And as we're doing that and establishing security, not just at Kabul, but wherever necessary to evacuate Americans, anyone holding an American weapon, American military equipment, should be considered an enemy combatant. I mean, they've taken that from an ally or an American, and they should be considered enemy combatants unless they make it very clear that they pose no threat to America. This is American gear given to the Afghan army, and it was seized by a hostile force.
Representative Banks, I heard you speak previously about how you were a part of that equipped mission, a central one to how we would allow the Afghan National Army to defend itself. I get weapons, I get vehicles. But there's reporting in the New York Post today that Taliban units, likely the Haqqani network, are using U.S. biometric data to hunt down anyone who has worked with us in the Afghan government. How do we lose accountability of databases like that? And now not only are they falling into the hands of the Taliban and the Haqqani network, but Pakistani spy agencies, the ISI, likely has access to this American data. How does that happen?
I don't, Pete, there's no good answer to this. I mean, this is unthinkable. I mean, it's one thing to talk about vehicles that were left behind, weapons and ammunition, even night vision goggles, medical supplies. The Taliban now has more Black Hawk helicopters than 85% of the countries in the world because of the negligence of this Biden administration. But to your point, to think that biometric data of those Afghans who served alongside us over the last 20 years has now fallen into the hands of some of our most dangerous enemies, not just the Taliban, but ISIS, the ISI, and others. I mean, this is an unthinkable crime on the part of the American military, their negligence that is going to directly lead to the deaths of those who served alongside us for 20 years. How are we ever going to regain the trust of our allies or any ally in the future to earn their trust to come and serve alongside us again when we created an epic failure of trust like this one? I don't know how it happened. We're going to demand answers. Next week, we mark up the National Defense Authorization Act before the House Armed Services Committee. I have an amendment that would demand answers on this specific question. How did it happen? How did this biometric data, how did all of this other military equipment, why was it allowed to be left behind to fall into the hands of the Taliban? And by the way, the Taliban is a Mickey Mouse organization compared to ISIS-K. So you can bet right now that all of this equipment is going to end up not just in the hands of the Taliban, but that ISIS-K is going to obtain it at some point, and they're going to use it in a much more lethal and dangerous way than the Taliban would ever use it. And that to me is unthinkable, and someone should be held accountable for it today.
Sean, you've been a small unit leader. You understand accountability of personnel and equipment, yet we see something on this size and scale. Will there ever be accountability for the fact that it was so grossly mishandled?
No, because I think for Democrats, there's a different standard than there are for even Republicans. I mean, for goodness sake, the Democrats tried to impeach President Trump the moment he took his hand off the Bible and did so for a phone call that was totally fine. But Joe Biden can hand an entire country to multiple terrorist factions, and there's no accountability whatsoever. It blows my mind that no one's resigned, no one's been fired, there's been no accountability. And not only that, the Biden administration and our CENTCOM commanders and our generals are talking about, oh, well, we've let the Taliban know how best they can protect our people. What? What's even to add insult to injury to all of this is the fact that the Biden administration is sort of trying to mainstream the Taliban as a kindler, gentler Taliban 2.0. It's an insult to everyone who fought there. It's an insult to every family who lost loved ones there and the thousands of allies that gave their lives in support of our mission.
Yeah, our troops are hostage to them until all of them leave, and then an untold number of hostages left behind after that. Representative Warren Davidson, Jim Banks, Sean Parnell, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys, and thanks for your service.